from an Isaac Hayes hit called Sweet Exorcist, 1970s jam, all right? I believe we need more discussion of the blues in our classrooms and in our communities, okay? I deal with many students. I teach over at City College of San Francisco, but I also teach for an organization called Homie, that's also in San Francisco, and I'm also part of Gateway, which is a high school program to transition youth into college, all right? These students tell me that they need the blues, especially after we study about the blues, but that they fear the blues. They fear the blues. And there's a lot of fear, the males many times, machismo reasons that they have for feeling the blues. But there's this kind of a sense that there's a universal fear to show vulnerability, right? To show fear. And when they hear blues, they think, oh, I'm not supposed to be like that, or I'm not supposed to show that. And perhaps, you know, our mass media has had this kind of effect on us, right? Whereas before, we know post-slavery, there was an embracing of the blues, right? You know, and when the blues got to me as a young man, I felt it. And I appreciated that feeling of the blues. But by the time that it had gotten to me, it had been transformed, right? Okay? We had the blues go into jazz, into rock and roll, and into soul. Some of the more popular artists like James Brown, Aretha Franklin. In my neighborhood, where I grew up, San Francisco's Mission District, we embraced what were called Soul Oldies. Okay, so we embraced African-American soul music, you know, beyond James Brown, very obscure singers and bands, you know, that were not in the mainstream, but we felt what they felt. You know, and this was very important for us, okay? So I do want to ask you a little bit, you know, I want to make this a bit interactive. What is the purpose of the blues? Why do we have this? Why do we have this concept? Why do we have this music? Why do we have this poetry? What about the blues? Why study something or why feel something that supposedly is supposed to make you feel sad? Why do we have the blues? Yes, sir.
Medicine.
I believe so. Medicine, it cures us, right? And that's another part of my presentation to you today is that I believe even more so than a medicine, but medicine as well, an exorcism, right? We got so many demons inside of us that we got to get out. But if we try to act normal, you know, we're not going to get that out. You know, we're not going to be able to express ourselves and cleanse ourselves and cure ourselves from all of these things that are happening in our communities. Okay, so I am, you know, this educator that believes in action. All right, so but I also have a history along with that. I want to talk a little bit about the history of how blues and soul oldies impacted my community growing up. The Mission District has changed a lot. All right, many argue that it really no longer exists the way it was when I grew up over there. In fact, when I grew up there, I was born into high-rise projects, and nowadays across the United States, they have been en masse torn down, right? These oldies, what they brought to us was this bonding of suffering together, man. And we would get together and we might drink or party, or we would work out to oldies music, right? You know, and I'm not that old. I'm only 42 years old. So understand that at the same time that we were embracing, you know, this much older music, you know, 1950s, 60s music, you know, I was a break dancer too, you know, break dancing on the streets, embracing hip hop, and then eventually gangster rap as well. But no, that we always found that our foundation, our standard was oldies. So at a certain point in the evening, we were like, let's throw on some oldies. Let's throw on some oldies, right? And we would sing with our cracked voices to this music. And you know, I question why this was. And I think this is something that also is happening in our communities now, and especially with our student bodies, is, I felt that I was not supposed to be happy. If I watched the television, I never saw anybody that really looked like me that had a smile on his face. And so I thought to myself, my purpose in life is not really supposed to be happy. And in fact, if I try to be happy like the television is telling me to be happy, I'm gonna be lying to myself. So I felt that, and I felt, and I think that we felt, my generation, and I think many people's generations here, that, there's more truth in the blues, in that soulful, sad music, than there is in this, illusion that they're trying to feed us, right? And so we embraced the suffering. We did not run away from it. And by doing that, it seems like we reversed it. Because after cleansing ourselves and exorcising ourselves, you know what happened? We would be so happy, man. We would be so loving with each other. And it was a way that we built community with each other. We would shake hands. What's up, bro? How you doing, man? And it's because we had released that pain together. And so it's a very beautiful, magical thing to embrace that type of soul, that type of blues, okay? Now, in my classrooms, before I get to my classrooms, I do briefly want to mention that there is a movement that is going on nowadays to bring back soul music, right? I work with Homie. In fact, yesterday I was with the organization. It's a nonprofit organization. Homie, a lot of the youth are involved in the juvenile justice system. And, I was asking them, do you guys ever play oldies? I was actually playing some oldies for them, right? Some soul oldies. And, just some, regular standards like I'd Rather Go Blind by Etta James. They seem to have known that only because the movie Cadillac Records came out and Beyonce was singing it. But note here, they did not have a connection to it anymore. They don't seem like they really embracing, the tempo of the music doesn't seem to embrace that really blues style, right? And so, I was asking them why they don't, listen to the blues as much anymore. And, some of their reactions, as I said earlier, were that they're kind of afraid to be seen as vulnerable, or that they connect blues, and somebody who's connected with blues on the streets is weak. And so we were talking and brainstorming about how it also could be extremely empowering and kinship building. Right? Okay, so there's a movement here actually in Northern California to bring this music back. And so if you have a chance, you can find some of their videos on YouTube. They're called Soleros. Souleros. And this group of very young people, 20 years old and up, what they're doing is they're bringing back old soul oldies music into the barrios, right? And so I've spoken at some of one of their events before, right? And what they did was, like, they'll bring all the lowriders and they'll bring like all soul oldies music, and they'll have the gente, really build community on this really soulful music that seems to have been lost, or that is attempted to be taken from us, right? Through a new, more modern, always fast-paced tempo type of music, right? So how can we fit this into the classroom? How can we bring this back into the community, okay? Told you a little bit about how the Soleros do it. In class, I talked to the students about Raymond Patterson. And, we go over poems like Prison Blues or Charge Account Blues. And they really get a kick off Charge Account Blues because, it doesn't work like that anymore. Times have changed, but, the concept still exists about, credit, etc., capitalism. And so we get a lot of discussion regarding the blues and how we can make fun of our blues at the same time. It doesn't always have to be like depressing, sad, right? You can find a strength in the blues too and make fun of yourself, okay? And so we talk about that. So some of the students' poems that they've come up with, they have like the jail or the juvenile blues. Of course, love is a standard for love and blues, right? When the 49ers lost One student created the 49ers blues, right? All right, and so they're very creative, and they're seeing how, the blues can help us out in our lives, and it seems to be a more real way to connect with each other. Okay, now in the community, what I've done, and this past summer is a great example. There's gentrification that's happened in my old neighborhood. And what's happened is in San Francisco, it's a capitalist center on earth. The Mission District was really the Barrio when I was growing up, and they've kicked people out. They kicked the gente out. They're also doing this they've already done it in Fillmore, which was the West Coast. I would argue the West Coast capital for African Americans. At least one of them. Some years ago, and the Fillmore has completely been transformed. Hunters Point is being gentrified as well. So what we did is we brought the blues into the Mission District, and we organized this event where we did poetry on the streets, right by all the different murals, right? And we called it La Llorona. La Llorona, means translation is the crier, right? And there's this mythology about this crying, wailing woman that is, looking for her children who are dead, right? And we took that power of sadness, that power of the blues, and we used it to talk about gentrification, for people to become more conscious about what's happening in our world, right? I don't know if I have enough time to read just that poem that I created. That's about it. That's all I have for right now. But I do have copies of... I'll read it then. And I'm going to pass out copies later. This is the poem that I read out on the streets, 24th and Balmy Avenue. Okay, yeah, if you don't mind, Lauren. Okay, so the poem is called Kicked Out. The homeboy tattoo, true. Smile now, cry later. It was a boast and compliment to be kicked out of school, of church, of civilization. Only the streets were where savages belonged. Even donut-holed cops knew we owned Las Calles. So that was our goal, to be joined with streets. Concrete at my feet. Beers mixed with tears. Angel dust till I bust. Laughing at infinity. Por vida. With pride and panic, I have learned even infinity has its limits. Because today, I must pay my treasured gray cement and beautiful black tar. You no longer love me. You break my heart. Now is later. Gracias, everyone. Have a great time here, learning, sharing.